Welcome back. Rain Durham's Nothing But Truth. I want to thank Chris Woodward for being part of things. And make no mistake, we were talking about it, if he still comes on. Of course, he's coming back on. He's locked into the system. And once you're in, you can't get out. Seton Motley has learned that, certainly. And the likes of Ben Johnson, who we've got to get back on real soon, and Bruce Thornton and the like. Colonel Kakulu as well. Wonderful members of the team, Jerry Boyer, and probably someone who knows it better than anyone is Pastor Aaron Free. That all said, it's great to be back with you. Happy Friday. How are you? Doing okay? Are you okay with this? The coverage from NBC and ABC regarding Nelson Mandela's passing and the history, describing Reagan as pro-apartheid during the Mandela coverage. This coming from our good friends at newsbusters.org, Kyle Drennan. And here is the clip. Roll it.
The U.S. wasn't always on Mandela's side. In the 1980s, President Reagan supported the apartheid regime, a Cold War ally, even as protests broke out on college campuses across America, demanding that the U.S. punish the regime. Free Nelson Mandela became a popular anthem for black and white Americans. Finally, Congress, including key Republicans, overrode Reagan's veto, imposing the economic sanctions that helped break the apartheid regime.
The importance of that Americans took a stand against apartheid and said no to our government when Ronald Reagan wanted to solidify, U.S. support for apartheid. We said no, we said sanctions. And we played an important role, and that was very critical as well.
You did play an important role, and it's a privilege to have you here today.
The lesson, of course, is context here and the recognition that Mandela was part of the ANC, and that, of course, is the African National Congress, communist. So if you are meeting with communists, you're supported by the Soviet Union, which was, it turns out, if you reflect on the extraordinary good that Mandela did for his country and for the example of the world when it came to not only not seeking revenge out on the enemies that would be the people that were enforcing apartheid, but after coming to power, bringing in some free market reforms, or maintaining those and not shifting over to a total statist economy by any means. There were some labor regulations, and it was a mixed bag, but it was the route of more toward a free market economy. And why is that important? Well, it showed that there was an element of pragmatism and how he was attempting to do what he inevitably did. So certainly great moments in his life and can be looked at as a champion of freedom, but there are times where you look at incredible blind spots and the embracing of practices. So he's a human being. And while you don't want to bring up somebody's worst day on the day they pass, when we are elevating people and recognizing them, we should recognize what Richard Stengel did from Time magazine. And South Africa Today, we also should recognize what's happening there. Extraordinary amount of violence and rape. And it's racial, driven black on white, black majority on the white minority. There's also a tendency for people to try to take the Mandela legacy and plug it in or reference it to use it politically against one against another, and it happens on both sides. I'm not really comfortable with that. I think we can make our points aside from that. So overall, and we'll talk about this with historian Bruce Thornton at the top of the hour, recognize people are human, extraordinary man who became a symbol for freedom, but also the recognition of his blind spots and those failings. You want to take a good look at Castro and Gaddafi and other regimes he was supportive of. Again, there's an element of pragmatism there. The idea that he would walk away from power and not go the route of Mugabe, I think speaks volumes. And that's extraordinary as well. Max Boot wrote a great piece today on Nelson Mandela. A lot of wonderful writing and coverage. But as Chris Woodward stated, Chris Woodward, business environmental reporter for American Family News, onenewsnow.com, yeah, it's really gone one direction at this point, not with the recognition of the other. And it's important to recognize the other. We've got to recognize the truth. I'm always uncomfortable with the notion of deifying leaders, and especially at the expense of the truth with context. But I digress. Let's keep moving, and let's go to... It's easy to be critical, isn't it? Something just hit me there, and I've got to say this. It's easy for me to highlight some of the things that were his blind spots, or the fact that he was using tactics like violence and terrorism, to which he was put in jail for, against an awful system, but nonetheless received support and was a communist. So you got all these things, and he comes out 25 years, he's been imprisoned, and he forgives. Huge. Can't imagine that. And then moves and puts the country on a path when people are making the post-Cold War split, if you will, seeing the failings of a communist regime and the communist economy, and going a different route, and also seeing how certain people would put in democratic reforms and then suspend them when their term ran out. He did not do that. Big deal. Okay. What else we have? We've got a lot. We got a lot of Mel. Are you going to play some more Chris Matthews? Maybe. Yeah. We've got some more of the president, certainly. In fact, I think we should get to the president, and that would be cut number 6. Here is President Obama commenting on the Republicans and how they should be embarrassed last night. Hardball. Roll it.
I think that there's so much focus on the politics of the base, and the Republicans being worried about getting challenged during the primary season, that inhibits a lot of cooperation that is there. And I actually think there are a bunch of Republicans who want to get stuff done. They've got to be embarrassed, because the truth of the matter is that they've now been in charge of the House of Representatives, one branch or one chamber and one branch of government, for a couple of years now, and they just don't have a lot to show for it.
It's a point of view. I think we're through the looking glass when up is down, down is up, in discussing President Obama answering questions and describing his political opposition. At times during the interview, he says, "I'm partisan," and then goes and makes the statement, "but objectively." And it reminded me of the summit, the healthcare summit, where President Obama was going to have people come together and he was going to be the leader. That really didn't work. They made they said their talking points, and when they tried to advance a discussion or even a debate, President Obama not only was the referee, he was the star player for the pushing of what it became his signature legislation, as dishonest as the presentation and promises have turned, and the broken promises have shown to be. And that is somehow looked at as getting together and doing the right thing. No, not really. I thought it was a sham, and it was unfortunate. I believe in true debate. I believe when you have people who disagree, question time, for example, across the pond. We posted Margaret Thatcher's response to someone preaching the virtues of equality. And her response to that, in essence, you want the poor to be poorer. But the question time, I don't like the clock running out. And that's what happens during these hearings. And that's why we still don't have true answers and actually accountability. One part of the fact that we don't have accountability is because when you have two people looking at a hearing, one is looking at dodging and protecting, the other is looking at times politically targeting, yeah, absolutely, but also getting to the truth and holding people to account. Now, you may want me to say, hey, Crane, why do you have to be that way? Why do you have to say that one side's trying to politicize it and protect themselves while the other side is actually after the truth? You're going to draw a distinction between the two parties of Democrat, Republican, respectively. And I will mention there's going to be a political element to anything regarding politicians as we know them, certainly. But I'm not going to play the bunny stew game of sitting there going, the D's are being forthright on particular issues when they are not. And when it comes to the scandals that we understand to be the IRS scandal or Benghazi or pick one, Fast and Furious, or the president's abuse of power and recognizing that. Politicians are more politicians and partisans than they are statesmen. And I always hear, and I really look forward to Seton Motley coming on, because I'm going to ask him about this. Seton and I think, share a lot of the same opinions, and sometimes we differ, but overall, I think we're pretty in line with each other on things. And what gets me is they always talk about being a statesman. Why is being a statesman equated to the likes of John McCain in the mainstream media, except when he runs against the president, now president of the United States, or the Democratic opposition when it came to the presidency? I'll tell you why. Because we start taking advice from people who desire to defeat us in the arena of ideas as well as at the polls when people go in and vote their conscience. Wonderful comment on Facebook, by the way, regarding Harry Reid. I want to read it a little later. And another one of the biggest compliments I've received. So we'll get to all those and more. Seton Motley, president of Less Government, is next. Friday edition of Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. Happy Friday, everybody. Put a smile on your face.